Hey there, cats and kitties. I am the Blues Man, Johnny Blues, and holy shnikes, Cobra Kai. This series is all kinds of badass. It kicks all kinds of ass, and of course, no pun intended, with all the highfalutin kicking and punches being thrown within it. This series taking place so many years after, but picking up from the original The Karate Kid from the early 80s. And I have to say, I really didn't know what to expect from this series, whether or not they would be respectful to the characters and sort of the franchise overall and everything like that. And by the end of the first episode, let alone the actual, first season of 10 episodes, hopefully the first of several seasons, you see utmost that there is care and concern, respectability and a love, a heartfelt love and appreciation for these movies of old and these characters. I have to say, this is very much a story about fathers and sons, father and daughter, the old school versus the new generation, and so much of it could almost fall victim to history repeating itself, to telling the same kind of story. And there are aspects to it that do see history repeating itself, but then again, so much of it subverts expectations in such a astounding, exemplary way. And I have to say, my favorite thing all told about this series is William Zabka's portrayal. This is a series full of gravitas and pathos, and I love the fact that, of course, being titled Cobra Kai, it's very much focused a little bit more on his character and where he finds himself in the here and now. Of course, Ralph Macchio does enter the fray, and there is this sense of balancing out as the series continues all the way through its 10 episodes. The idea of balance being very much something that, calls back on the teachings of Mr. Miyagi in the original Karate Kid. One thing I do have to say from the outset, I sort of want to be transparent about this particular factor, is I am not somebody who personally holds a whole hell of a lot of nostalgia for the original Karate Kid films. Of course, I grew up in the 80s. They were very much a part of the 80s experience growing up in that time, that era. But I was always much more influenced by and attracted to things like Ghostbusters and Back to the Future, being a sci-fi fantasy fan, that kind of stuff. So whereas I did enjoy the Karate Kid films as a kid, I really haven't seen them in a very, very long time. With the, actor William Zabka, it's an interesting thing because it's kind of contradictory in the fact that his face is that which is synonymous with the school antagonist, the school bully, not only in the original The Karate Kid film, but even more so memorably to me in the Rodney Dangerfield film Back to School. And, whereas he's kind of playing pseudo the same character, only he's focused on swimming in Back to School, whereas it's karate in The Karate Kid. But I've long maintained, whenever you experience a film or a TV show or whatever like that, and you run into an actor or actress that can so convincingly portray a character that you are left hating, that you are left despising, and sometimes, in the case of, if you look at, for an example, Ghostbusters, the actor William Atherton, who played, air quotes, Dickless in that film, people almost can't disassociate between the character and the actor. And I almost feel like for the longest time, that's the appreciation I've had of William Zabka. Like he is the quintessential school bully, antagonist, that kind of thing, villain, for lack of a better term. And that is what I have always most associated him with, but I've always long maintained that I want to see him in other things. I want to see him actually putting his acting chops to the test. And I feel like that was finally answered with this particular series, being that I really, I don't follow actors, I don't follow their careers and such like that. So I really haven't seen Zabka since then. I don't know if he's been in other movies and such like that. But I have to give him absolute applause and such like that, accolades for his performance in this series, because it is gravitas laden, pathos laden, and he is the most resounding aspect to this series for me, because he lives up to every estimation that I ever had, that he is a just quintessential actor, performer, in the range of emotions that he goes through. I mean, he still retains so much of that you know, sort of jerk-faced, but badass, but cool, but, you know, evolving into a better sense of semblance and self, and teeter-tottering back and forth with that conflict. This series is all about conflict, and we're not just talking about, you know, ages-old conflict between Daniel LaRusso and Johnny, you know, as they still very much exist, and that is something that is, you know, there's a lot of fanning the flames throughout the course of this series along those lines between them both, butting heads, especially with the resurfacing, the reforging of the Cobra Kai, you know, karate dojo as Johnny brings about in this series, and the threat that represents with the harsh memories of old, of what Daniel went through, being bullied, being attacked by the original Cobra Kai, and having to find this sense of balance, not only including Machio's, you know, Daniel character, but also his family. And, you know, he has a daughter who he once taught karate to, and she's, you know, it's 8 years later for her, she's 16. And so there's a lot of focus that then shifts over into her school life, and she's kind of become part of a popular clique of really, you know, bitchy girls and everything like that, the typical mean girls kind of clique, and you know, she's kind of forgotten her one well and true friend who's now become the subject of a lot of their bullying and their name calling because she's heavy set. And you know, there's like a neighbor kid in Johnny's apartment complex. His family just moved in recently, and he's kind of the nerdy oafish character, and where it really subverts the expectations is the lines that are being drawn for these characters. You know, you think that this kid that is taken under Johnny's wing subsequently and taught karate through the Cobra Kai reforged dojo, you kind of feel like he is on the Daniel track if you call back to the original Karate Kid, whereas at the same time we have sort of an estranged son in Johnny's life. You know, he had tried to be a family man, and everything went to pot, and he kind of became like a deadbeat dad. And so he's estranged from his son, and he tries to sort of, you know, do the fatherly thing, but he's a give-up artist in a lot of ways. If things are too hard and too harsh, he just doesn't want to deal with it. And so it seems to be that's what led to his family falling apart. That's why he and his son don't get along. And this kid from the outset is kind of a jerk himself. He's committing crimes. He's in with the wrong crowd, and you know, you almost expect him to become the Johnny, you know, character, a new type of character, in being just bad and you know, criminalistic and all these things. And again, it subverts expectations, where the bad kid is on a track toward the good, and the good kid is on a track toward the bad. And it's just the entire series, for everyone involved, for Daniel and his family, for, you know, Zabka's character Johnny and his estranged son, and the bullies in the school, and the mean girls in the school, and you know, their sons and daughters and everything like that, getting along, finding a way to find some sort of appreciative level in their own lives. And they save till the very, very end a return of a character that completely and totally gobsmacked me. Because unless I'm much mistaken, there's a point earlier in the series where this character is brought up and he's claimed to be dead. And I was just like, oh, okay, you know, I didn't know. You know, I haven't kept up with the careers of a lot of the actors from the original Karate Kid, if I'm completely and totally honest. And so when he shows up in the final scene of the 10th and final first season, hopefully, episode, I was just like floored. I mean, the entire series on its own, of its own accord, had floored me, had kept me riveted and drawn and excited to get through every single episode. The casting is exemplary. The storytelling is exemplary. The pacing of it, everything about it blew away any expectations I could have had going into it. Is it worth a watch? It is completely worth a watch of all 10 episodes, if not multiple times, because it is exemplary. It is spectacular. Seeing Zabka and Machio, you know, reprising their roles without even that level of nostalgia for the Karate Kid of old, because they fairly deliberate all throughout the course of the series flashbacks to nudge you on and give you enough of the information of what came before so that you know. And but at the same time, because the focus is on the Johnny character because it's on Cobra Kai, the former villains of the story in a sense. There is this one standout moment. It's the only moment I'm going to spoil outright where, you know, Johnny is talking to his neighbor kid, you know, sort of protege in the dojo about his perspective on everything, all of the events as they happened in the original Karate Kid film. And so he's basically relating all of the events of that movie, but from his perspective as not being in the wrong, in the ways that he feels the Daniel character had done him wrong. And he's telling this story from that perspective, and it's so intriguing because that is something that is a quintessential aspect to the best villains, where they don't think they're wrong, where they think what they were doing was right and righteous. And they don't see any qualms with that. They can't understand why somebody is coming and trying to fight them and put them down and put a stop to what they're doing, or trying to change their perspective from where they're viewing things. And it is utmost compelling to hear in the span of 2-3 minutes the entirety of the original film, but as told from Zabka's Johnny character's perspective. And that is worth the ticket price alone for this series. It is awesome sauce, all told. And I just can't get enough of it. I really hope we get a second season, a third season, fourth season. You know, bring it on. Give me more Cobra Kai, please. Because holy shnikes, man. So yeah, I'd love to hear from you guys in the comments below. If you've watched the series, if you've thought about watching the series, you know, if you have, what you thought of it, did you enjoy it? Love it or hate it, anything goes in the comments below, as long as we have a civil, respectful conversation, as always. But I'd be fairly surprised if anyone gave this series a chance and didn't just fall head over heels in love with it like I have, and get excited over it. Everything like that. But of course, if you didn't, if you found it, you know, lacking in any way, shape, or form, didn't find it as resounding, let me know as to why in the comments. But hopefully with this video, if you've been on the fence about checking it out, if you weren't sure at all whether it was worth giving of your time, it is worth it, and then some. At least as far as I'm concerned, this is one man's opinion, but I couldn't give it any more higher praise or recommendation. So yeah, otherwise that'll be pretty much it for me on this one. If this video finds you well, and I'll catch you all later. Peace.